Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. Just going to let everyone jump on the call, make sure that we have everyone who signed up to be here this morning. So we'll get started in just a minute. Thanks. Okay, it looks like we've got some people on the call, so let's jump right into this community conversation. Thank you all for joining us for our first community conversation of 2022. We're very excited to highlight the need for healthy food in the district. My name is Alison Donovan, and I'm the manager of individual philanthropy at SUM. And today I'll be facilitating this conversation. Before we start, I just want to start off with a few housekeeping items. This session will be recorded. And if you have any questions come up during the conversation, please feel free to use the Q&A icon at the bottom to type in your questions, and we will do our best to answer any and all questions that come up towards the end of the conversation. And if you would prefer just to interact with us throughout the conversation, and add your thoughts, we also have a chat box at the bottom, which will be monitored as well. So let's get started. To warm us up into this important topic, let's do a little bit of trivia. I think we're going to have a poll populate in just a second. Great. So we're looking for what percentage of district residents do you think lack consistent access to enough food for an active, healthy lifestyle? Feel free to add your educated guess, and we will answer this question in the first segment of this conversation. Great. Okay. So to kick off our 2022 series, we're going to be discussing getting healthy food to individuals and families experiencing hunger in DC, and how stakeholders like you help to secure and distribute the food across the district through your investment in SUM. Today, we are joined by Ralph Boyd, President and CEO of SUM, JaVon Hansknecht, Director of In-Kind Services, and Mike Greene, a Grow a Row coordinator at a local community garden right here in DC. Welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us today. Ralph, let's start with you. Roughly 52 years ago, SUM started with a simple act of kindness when an interfaith group of religious leaders and lay people started to hand out soup and sandwiches to people in need. Over time, SUM has grown to include medical and dental care, mental health and addiction treatment, affordable housing, and job training. So what role does food service and access to healthy food continue to play at SUM today?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Allison, and good morning, everyone. Or I think we've crossed the meridian, so I think it's good afternoon, everyone. Delighted to have everyone join us. So to answer your question, Allison, let me do what I usually do, which is create some context. And folks who have heard me talk about SUM and our mission have heard me say this, but I think it's always worth repeating and reiterating. We're in the life-saving and the life-improving and the life-transforming business for individuals and families and their communities. And you mentioned it in your opening remarks, Allison. We house people, we provide healthcare, job training, academic and educational enrichment, addiction treatment, among so many other things. It's those comprehensive wraparound services with which we use to treat the whole person at some. And so access to healthy food is an increasingly important part of that mix, not just because we decided it should be, because there's a pressing need there, and we are trying to be responsive to the most pressing needs of the most vulnerable friends and neighbors and citizens within our community. So let me start out by giving a few what I think are illuminating data points. First is to answer the trivia question. The overall food insecurity rate within the district is about 11%, but there are some startling numbers within the number, if you will. And the first is that 29%, almost 30% of Latinx-led households with children reported food insufficiency in a study that was done in April of 2021. So within 7 days of being asked that question, almost 30% of Latinx-led households indicated that the food insufficiency or a lack of ability to get sufficient food was an issue for their families. Similarly, 21% of Black households with children reported the same food insufficiency, if you will, again, back in April of 2021. Then there's the issue of food, what we commonly refer to as food deserts. If you look to Ward 8 within the district, it's our lowest income per capita ward, and it currently has one full service grocery store that serves about 81,000 people in Ward 8 and the surrounding communities. In contrast, in stark contrast, in Ward 3, which is our highest income ward per capita, it has 13 stores for about 85,000 people. I think those numbers are illuminating, they're staggering, they're disappointing, and we're part of the process of wanting to see change in that space. You mentioned it, Alison, in your opening remarks. Some was founded over 52 years ago by Father Horace McKenna and other inspired clergy and lay people. A lot of people have heard me tell this story, essentially starting out serving sandwiches to people experiencing homelessness out of the backseat of a country squire station wagon. I tell the story that way because it's kind of memorable, pretty much true, but it really underscores our humble beginnings. From that, we evolved, if you will, into a soup kitchen. The lines got longer and longer, and in time, some evolved to serve more of the pressing, critical human needs of the people that we were feeding. It expanded into, as you mentioned, medical care, addiction treatment, affordable housing, job training. The point there is that a hot meal has led to doing so much more for the most vulnerable people among us and with us. So access to food remains a priority for some today, one of our pressing priorities. It's how we got started, and it's how we continue to help hundreds of people every day. And throughout the ongoing healthcare, the health pandemic, I want to underscore this point. Our dining room has continued to provide breakfast and lunch every single day without interruption. What I like to say to people is, some's been around for almost 52 years. We have never missed a day of feeding people in over half a century. I think that underscores how effective we are, but also how pressing the need continues to be. No matter the circumstance, the need is there. During the pandemic, we temporarily had to provide to-go meals, and in September, we reopened our in-person service for breakfast. We suspended that briefly again at the beginning of 2022 with the onset of the Omicron variant, but we have since restarted our in-person service. But the point is, we are either serving people in person or with to-go meals, no matter the context and circumstances. In addition to our dining room food service, and I think this is important for people to understand the length and breadth of what we do in this food security space, we also provide much needed meal and nutrition service at our 2 senior housing facilities within the district, as well as food pantry services that are available to anyone who comes and seeks food at our food pantries. We also distribute food through our housing facilities throughout 6 of the district's 8 wards. So we are about food wherever the SUM footprint is, and we are pretty much everywhere in the district where there is need. As I look forward and we look forward to the remainder of 2022 and 2023, when we talk about and think about what we're going to do to really address more comprehensively and more deeply food insecurity issues, we're looking to strategic partnerships as we go forward. And one of them, for example, is with the Capital Area Food Bank, to make sure that we're able to provide mobile healthy food markets at various of our housing facilities throughout the district. So working with the Capital Area Food Bank to not just get food to people who need it where they are, but a focus on healthy food, vegetables and produce and the like. And then there are the continuation of partnerships like with Mike Greene's group, and Mike, I know, is going to talk about that in a few minutes. So we are trying to be a long, wide, and deep and how we address food insecurity issues throughout the District of Columbia. It's a critical part of the service mix, of the product mix of SUM. And we would like to find a day when we're not necessary in that space, but I suspect that that day is not soon on the horizon, but we're going to have oars in the water on providing food through every distribution chain and vehicle we can.
Definitely, definitely. Thank you so much, Ralph, for setting that very important context. Those statistics definitely are unsettling, especially around the grocery stores. I know that that's a very big area of focus right now in the city at large. But Mike, your community garden has partnered with SUM for several years, in large part because of the disparities that were just mentioned by Ralph. Can you tell us a little bit more about what Grow a Row is and what your community garden is doing with SUM?
First, I'd just like to thank SUM for giving me this opportunity to represent our garden and talk about the program. A little background, we are in Ward 3 where all the supermarkets are and the community gardens. We have a very large garden. It's about 120 plots with, I think, currently a 7-year waiting list to get in. So it is big. Just off Connecticut Avenue, Tilden Street in Cleveland Park. But the Grow a Row program itself conceptually could not be easier. It's basically, you have produce you can't use, you donate it. It doesn't get any easier than that. Ralph had mentioned Capital Area Food Bank, and that's how we got involved. In 2010, there was some sort of, I guess it was a citywide initiative spearheaded by Capital Area Food Bank to kind of connect gardens with, service providers, basically. And we were paired with SUM. And then at some point, there's no more connection with Capital Area Food Bank, but we just asked if we could continue the program directly with SUM, and we've been doing it ever since. So it started in 2010. In 2020, the woman who had been running it for literally a decade from the beginning stepped aside. I took over just in time for the pandemic. So our donations really plummeted. It was. I mean, everybody knows the story. Last year, they rebounded pretty nicely. We're hoping to get back to normal, but we were donating probably 3 to 4 decent sized boxes of all sorts of things, at peak season. Another thing that we started literally just last year, we have 2 new plots that we carved out of kind of unused land, kind of marginal growing areas. We started a dedicated herb garden because some is, they'll take any amount of herbs basically. So we have like a new dedicated herb garden that we donate a lot of stuff from. And then we created an entirely new plot that everything that we grow on it goes to some. It's kind of in a shady area. It's a work in progress, but we're learning what grows there, and we're just going to keep making it better. In terms of logistics, it's really the simplest thing in the world. We ask gardeners to put stuff in coolers over the weekend. For our relationship with some, we drop off on Mondays. And that's it. We have volunteers who bring the stuff over on Monday, whatever we've collected. They started a contactless drop off, which I think we should continue. It works so well. We bring it right to a warehouse, drop it off. If someone's there, that's great. If someone's not, I just text, let them know it's there, and off we go. So to sum it up, I'd like to kind of make a pitch for anyone, if you have a garden, if you're a member of a community garden, you know what it's like in August. You can't use it all, it's more than any reasonable person can eat. Reach out to some, very, very easy to do. Donate a little bit, extra, and it's just a great thing to do to address, the lack of fresh foods in, a large part of the city, to say the least.
Definitely. That's so cool that this is happening, and this partnership is so fruitful for some and the Grow a Row participants. It's just so important to highlight that you can engage with some at multiple levels as community members. And just one quick follow-up question, recognizing that it is now springtime and people's gardens are just getting started. Can you tell us about what new foods might be coming to some in the coming weeks and months?
Well, we've learned in the dedicated plot that we're really going to focus on cool weather spring kind of crops. So we're going to be putting in peas, lettuce, spinach, chard, beets, carrots, all the kind of things that should come in around June. But we think we can extend through the summer, through the hot months where you usually can't get those things. And so we're hoping to, instead of really changing the crop mix, we may just end up with those kind of cool weather crops throughout the year. And I want to, say a little thing about JaVon being really, really helpful. We've reached out to him, get great feedback on what the kitchen can use, what they like, what they don't like. So we're going to try to, at least for the dedicated plot, we can tailor what the kitchen can use the most, and if it grows there, then we'll concentrate on that. And then garden, the entire garden, everything. Everything you can imagine gets grown in that garden. We try not to accept the really exotic sort of donations, but any of the basics you can imagine will be coming online in the next 6 weeks, and then through October or November if we're lucky.
That's great. Yeah, it's making me hungry just hearing about all of these foods that will be coming to those.
Healthy hungry.
Exactly. Yeah. So thank you so much for going into that. How exciting. It's just a great time to be involved with some. Now over to JaVon. Now Mike drops off these amazing produce items, and others are dropping off food items like canned food throughout the week. So how does the food get to those in need, and what have you done to ensure continued access to healthy foods over the last few years, especially in response to the pandemic and as we're dealing with food insecurity increases as well as being impacted by supply chain issues and inflation.
Yeah, of course. So hi everybody again. Nice to be here. Definitely, I'll go over kind of two areas where we hand out food. So I'll stick with our food warehouse and our 71 O Street building, which Ralph already kind of briefly went over. So I'll actually start with 71 O Street. So at 71 O Street, as most of everybody knows, we hand out breakfast and lunch. A lot changed due to the pandemic. In terms of allowing guests to come indoors or not allowing guests to come indoors, to putting up barriers, to a whole bunch of new protocols and policies. But as Ralph noted, the one major thing that did not change is we still handed out food through it all, which has been amazing, whether or not that's a warm meal, whether or not that's a to-go meal. Anybody who showed up to some, anybody who continues to show up to some, still gets food one way or another, which is something that I'm very blessed to be a part of here in DC. So kind of other aspects in the 71 O Street building that we've noticed over the last few years is we may still hand out breakfast and lunch, but we still, the rest of the day, there's still a whole bunch of people who come to our building seeking food that are outside of our normal feeding hours. And so big initiatives that we kind of picked up due to the pandemic actually works in partner with a lot of our volunteers and a couple other partnerships that we have in the district. So for example, there's a lot of volunteer opportunities that had to be let go due to the pandemic. And so in light of that, we said, you know, we still would love your assistance. You can make things such as sandwich bags or snack bags. You can donate bars, quick and easy things that we can continue to hand out from our front desk. And we continue to do that every single day. You could come to 71 O Street and we'll have handed out, you know, breakfast and lunch and then another 150 sandwiches from our front desk because the need is still there. People are still hungry throughout the day. And even if they miss those hours, we still want to be able to grant them with stuff. So we've been very, very blessed to have a lot of volunteers kind of transition over to doing things at home and donating those items to us. Kind of also coupled with that, I've been in a relationship with a food rescue operation in which restaurants or grocery stores, if they have items, kind of like Mike said, it's too much that they have. They actually do the same thing where they have a driver deliver them to us. So we may even have nice, healthy meals ready for people to take from our front desk. So that's been an amazing feature that we've been able to have. Guests are always shocked by the quality of all of these goods that we get because they really do come from some very nice grocery stores in the local areas. So that's always awesome to see. But transitioning over to the food warehouse, which is primarily where Mike has donated a lot of his fresh produce. We just kind of background for the food warehouse. We open it twice a week. So every Wednesday and Friday to both our programs within some so that their program managers can come to our warehouse and pick out non-perishable items and fresh produce to bring back to their residents. And then we also open it up on those 2 days just to general clients that might be in need of food items. And so generally when they come, we have what we call emergency food bags prepared, which is a huge bag full of pounds of food and general goods for them to take. And then we also allow for them to take other items from our food warehouse as well. So that's when it really comes in with the fresh produce. And I have to admit, the fresh produce, especially for Mike, goes very quickly. It is almost, people come in and ask, what new green thing do you have? What do you have? What's in the fridge? What's in the fridge? What's in the fridge? This stuff goes very, very quickly. And it just continues to prove to us, there's a lot of stereotypes about people who are in poverty that they don't go for fresh produce. They are just gonna have money and go to McDonald's. But just seeing the need and seeing the longing and the want for all of the fresh produce, I think it's really pushing us forward, especially within our strategic plan, just the huge push for fresh produce. We're just seeing it day in and day out, how much of a need it is for our clients. So partnerships with Mike are priceless for us and for our clients. So that's generally how we offer things from our food warehouse. I do know right before COVID, and then COVID ended up having us put a halt on it, we did start up a program that we're looking to relaunch in kind of a bigger aspect within the city, as we did start those food markets that Ralph talked about. So I believe we did it 2 or 3 times at some of our housing units where we would pretty much bring our food warehouse to different sites and not only open it up to our residents, but also open it up to the community. So I do know right when COVID was happening and everybody was going to grocery stores and stocking up on a million things, People are having difficulties with their jobs. We actually got a lot more involvement from the community that came in to not only donate items, but there was also a lot of increase in just the regular community coming in need of items. A lot more phone calls were coming in, a lot more emails. And so it was an awesome opportunity for us to offer that offsite so that they didn't always have to come to us. So that's something that we definitely would look to improve down the line amidst of everything.
That's awesome. Yeah, definitely meeting people where they are is very helpful and a really great way to get what is needed directly to those in need. And I just wanted to say a quick thank you because you have been on the front lines during this pandemic. And we are so grateful that Some has never missed a day of serving our community. And it's greatly due to you and your team keeping everything going. So thank you so much. And building off that, Ralph, JaVon did briefly mention the strategic plan, but this was just recently approved by our board of directors. Could you tell us a little bit about Some's plans to grow and how that will attribute to reaching more people in need with food services?
Yeah, thank you, Allison, and thank you, Mike and JaVon, for sharing with clarity the length and the breadth and the robustness of what we're doing in this space. I'm excited just listening to the two of you talk about it. As Allison's question suggests, we've recently at Some completed what I would describe as very rigorous strategic planning process that's led us to a 5-year strategic plan that we are energized about. We're energized about the opportunity to do more and better in terms of meeting the full range of human needs of vulnerable people in our community. And I would just say the process of coming to this plan was an incredibly, I already used the word rigorous and robust, but rigorous and robust. Just to give you some sense of that, we had over 70 people within our organization actively involved in the process of conceptualizing and creating the content of the plan. And those people were all up and down the org chart, from folks in the executive suite to the people literally on the front lines to delivering the services throughout a pandemic. They also touched and spoke to both clients, guests, patients, volunteers, folks throughout our organization, so that our strategic plan wasn't just, hey, what do the folks in the C-suite think? It's like, what are the folks who are delivering our mission every day, and the people who are the subject of that mission, how are they perceiving the need and how we're fulfilling those needs? So we felt like that process took a long time. It took almost 7 months, but it was well worth the time we took, because we felt the inputs that we needed to have to do more and better are what we got, and we've ended up with a strategic plan that we're really excited about. There are 6 principal elements to the strategic plan. I'll only focus on a couple of them, but one of the points I want to make before I do that is to say that a lot of what this plan reflects is our informed view of what the need is out there in the various areas that Some addresses, whether it's housing, food security, medical care, dental care, behavioral health care, addiction treatment, job training, whatever it is. We did exhaustive needs assessment to understand the difference between the need that is out there and the need that we and others are currently meeting, figure out what that modicum of unmet need is, and then how do we scale up? How do we build capacity to address that need? And food security is a part of that needs assessment. So when JaVon talks about all the different things we're doing, and Mike talks about the community markets component of it, that is all information that's in the hopper that suggests what we're doing now, but where and how we can expand going forward. I have always believed, and certainly the research and the data bears this out, as does common sense, that food is a critical part of well-being. And one of the principal elements of our strategic plan is what we call our whole person model approach to care. And that is to say, when somebody hits any one of the SUM platforms, whether they walk into JaVon's dining center, whether they get fresh produce from Mike's Gardens, whether they're housed in one of our 1,300 units of affordable housing, whether they walk into our medical clinic, our dental clinic, however they come to us, we see and profile the entire person to say, hey, what are this person's strengths? Because they're a part of the improving and transforming of their lives. So we want to build on the strengths that we know every person has as we treat and care for that person. But we also want to understand the things that they need, the services that they need to add to their well-being and to improve and transform themselves and their families and the neighborhoods and communities that they're in. So that whole person model of care is focused on treating mind, body, and soul, but also in all the dimensions of need where we may be able to advance somebody. So somebody comes in and gets a meal in JaVon's dining center, that can inevitably, where appropriate, lead to them then going across the street to our medical clinic or our dental clinic for dentures, or getting enrolled in our job training program, or signing up for some housing. We do single adult housing, family housing, senior housing. We have elderly folks, we have veterans, we have the whole range of folks. We have a robust substance use disorder and addiction treatment continuum program as well. So this idea of treating the whole person to add to their well-being and the well-being of their families, if they're part of one, and the communities where they work and play and live and recreate, or maybe on the street in those communities, that's what this whole person model of care is about. So that's a centerpiece of the strategic plan. And obviously the food security piece is a critical part of addressing the whole person. If a person's not healthy, they can't do well. How are they healthy? They're healthy through good sleep, exercise, meaningful recreation and work activity, and of course, healthy diet. So the food piece is a critical part of that well-being. The other big dimension of the strategic plan is to build out that affordable housing portfolio. We now have almost 1,200 units that are occupied, and we've got folks and families in them. Not only receiving the housing, but a comprehensive range of supportive services, again, to address all the needs a vulnerable person or family may need. We're in the process of now building another 139 units of single adult housing in what will be a 14-story building at the corner of North Capitol Street and Florida Avenue. And we've got a pipeline that we're hopefully about to add about 325 more units to. So the idea is to get to 2,000 units within the next 5 years. It took us almost 20 years to get the first 1,100 and something units. And so we say we're going to get to 2,000 in 5 years. So it is a very aggressive growth trajectory. But the good news is, so far anyway, we have the talent. We have the community, the supportive community of stakeholders, folks giving us their time, their treasure, and their talent. And so far anyway, we have access to the capital that we need to meet the aggressive targets in the strategic plan. And most importantly, we have the talent, the expertise, and the acumen to pull it off. So it's an aggressive plan. We'll have to be hitting on all cylinders to meet our objectives and the outcomes and the impact we seek from that plan. But we wouldn't be putting it out there if we didn't think we could do it, if we didn't expect we could do it, and if we didn't fully commit ourselves mind, body, and soul to doing it.
Thanks, Ralph. Yeah, it's so important to highlight the whole person care model that SUM is doing and strives to do even more of within the next 5 years for the strategic plan goals. It's definitely very exciting to see these pillars come forward. And now I think we're going to open it up to questions from the audience. So if anyone does have any questions, please feel free to drop those in the Q&A section at the bottom. and we'll work to get those to Ralph, Mike, and JaVon as they come in. But as we're waiting for you all to type those questions in, I have a quick question for JaVon. Could you tell us about what the barriers are that some faces in fighting hunger and the immediate steps underway with a strategic plan to address such barriers?
Yeah, of course. And I think this is it's actually a great topic because it's one of great interest to me, and I think Ralph as well, over the next few years. To me, in my opinion, the big thing for us is accessibility. And what I mean by this is currently, some offers a great amount of food. We offer a lot of food from our dining room for breakfast and lunch. We offer a lot of food from our food warehouse, but we are currently 100% stationary right here on 71 O Street. And as Ralph was mentioning earlier, the two wards, Ward 7 and 8, who are most in need of fresh produce and most in need of food security, they are obviously in Ward 7 and 8, and some resides in Ward 5. And so one of the big things that we would like to do is figure out ways to branch out to these different communities. And we, like I mentioned a little bit earlier, what we really want to do is build out these farmers markets, quote unquote, to all of these different locations. We have tons and tons of different sites across the board. And to be able to bring our food warehouse to these sites, to offer our food from our warehouse, to offer all of these fresh produce is something that we really want to push forward with. I know, especially when it comes to fresh produce as well, we're going to be moving towards trying to get a lot more partnerships, such as those with Mike, which is fantastic. So we've been working, we're going to, like Ralph has said earlier as well, we're going to be trying to solidify and work with our networking between places such as Capital Area Food Bank, Ample Harvest, and Fresh Food Connect are also great organizations that pair organizations with different local gardeners and farmers. So really try to build up that portfolio of fresh produce and the connections that we can place. And so that's kind of the big barrier and our ways of trying to fix that need. Another cool thing that we can always do that I'm interested in doing is piecing together outreach with these fresh food markets that we put out into Ward 7 and 8 or any other wards that are necessary, and having the opportunity for, you know, there can be a farmer's market over here to the left, and over here to the right, there's a speaker who can talk on food sustainability, on home gardening, on exercise, on healthy eating habits and new recipes. So to be able to kind of have a full picture idea that we can bring to these different ward locations is something that we really want to push forward with. And I'm actually very excited to push forward with over the next few years with some.
Alison, if I can jump in, because I'm so energized by what JaVon has said and what I know he's focused on doing, and just focus on two things that he talked about. One, accessibility, and something that he mentioned earlier, which is a good hot button for me, which is if folks are even paying minimal attention, what you're hearing us talk preponderantly about is healthy food, about green and colorful leafy vegetables and fruit. There is an abiding perception, and maybe at times it was supported by reality, that vulnerable people aren't focused on the good green stuff. Whether that's true or not, if it is true, it's typically an issue of accessibility, not want. The reality is, if you make good stuff available to people, they will want it, they'll consume it, and they'll receive the benefits from it, like the rest of us who have more abundant choices do ourselves and our families. So this is so mission centric and mission critical for us to make available the healthy stuff to folks who we know will want it and will put it to good use, coupled with, as JaVon said, the opportunity as we're doing that to expose people to healthy cooking, healthy recipes, diet and exercise that go with all of that. It really is an opportunity to, again, bundle the services that we're providing as part of that whole person model of care, if you will. So we're trying to touch minds, bodies, and souls with the whole range of things that make the physical well-being better and the other aspects of being a healthy human being as well.
Definitely. And what you were just saying, Ralph, reminds me that our affordable housing plays a key role in healthy eating as well, because it gives people access to the tools needed to cook these foods often.
Yep.
But we did have a question come in for Mike. I believe you had mentioned that you're relatively new in leading the Grow a Row group. So someone on the call is wondering what you've learned over the past few years, especially during the pandemic, and how has this impacted your thinking on growing Grow a Row moving forward?
It's been it's an unusual time to run something like this because of the pandemic. So I'm not sure what lessons I've really learned. I mean, it's such a strange, situation. I mean, I've learned that, sometimes it's hard to organize volunteers. I've learned that, working with some is incredibly easy. I have to say that. But I'd like to think that this, I'm not into the whole new normal concept. I don't like that phrase. I don't want this to be the new normal. I think going forward, we'll have things more organized with our volunteers, with the dedicated plot, with getting more participation from our gardeners. So I'm just looking forward to continue to grow the program. I mean, the woman who ran it before us, Diane, did a fantastic job for 10 years, and we used to donate a lot more than we do now. But I'm hoping to catch up. I'm hoping to get back to where it was, and then go forward from there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think with time, like anything, it'll get right back up to speed.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all so much. It looks like we're all set with those questions. So to finish up, we're going to end with another little bit of trivia. How many meals do you think some served in 2021? Great. Wonderful. So just to circle the conversation up, if you're wondering how you can be part of the ongoing efforts at SUM to help get healthy food to the individuals and families in need, you're not alone. Every year, SUM is so very grateful to have the financial support and material donations support from people throughout the DC area. And if you do ever have any questions, you can feel free to contact our development office at the phone number 202-381-0516, or you can give JaVon a call. His number is 202-750-3817. And we'll put those in the chat as well, so you have them to have for your records. And then also, just a heads up, next month is National Volunteer Appreciation Month. So if you're looking to get involved with our volunteer opportunities, especially with in-person food service starting up every morning and afternoon at our dining room, feel free to visit our website, www.sum.org/volunteer, and it's very easy to go right there and sign up for a time. And just to follow up to the last trivia question, last year we served 193,567 meals, and that's more than 530 meals a day. And we truly know that we could not do this work without the committed donors that we have, and we're so very grateful for all of you, especially those of you on our call. We really, really appreciate it, and we wouldn't have been able to do this work, especially during the pandemic, without you. And lastly, we have our next community conversation coming up on June 23rd, and we will be looking at how your support helps to provide healthcare to our neighbors, which is a super interesting conversation and definitely plays a role into our whole person care model. And lastly, special thanks to Ralph, Mike, and JaVon. We really appreciate your insight today. I know I've learned a lot, and I look forward to seeing Grow a Row's food come into our warehouse. And thank you to everyone who joined today. We hope to see you at our next community conversation, and I hope you all have a good rest of your days.
Thank you, Allison, Mike, and JaVon, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.